listening to St. Louis Front of House, the podcast that talks with St. Louis creatives. My name is JC Chandler, and I'm a technical director and a production manager in the industry for over 20 years. And I'm sitting down with the creators, the entrepreneurs, and the artists to talk about their passions and the lessons they've learned to be successful in the industry. So pull up a chair and join us, Front of House. Greetings, programs. My name is James Chandler, JC to my friends, and this is the first episode of St. Louis Front of House. I am sitting here next to the fabulous...
Oh, you are too kind.
Oh, it might help if I turn your mic up.
Way too kind.
Sherry Farmer. Mm-hmm. Most people know her via radio personality at Y98. Mm-hmm. You also do a numerous amount of work with emceeing for different organizations, mm-hmm. voiceover work.
Yes.
Other stations that you were also working as far as...
You want to talk about where I've worked in the past? Well, KEZK.
Right.
Their sister station, right. So over at Intercom. So I'm there a lot on weekends and fill in. So as I chase the dream still.
Oh, good. We have an actual guest.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Chris.
We appreciate you.
And that's one of those things where that's the other upside of going Facebook Live is mm-hmm. the fact that Patreons.
Yes.
Also, okay. So I need to just kind of get a little background on this. This is all brand new, mm-hmm. and this is the first podcast. But it's a learning curve. Mm-hmm. I technically is starting out as my capstone course for my graduation here at Lindenwood. Yay! Yay! But my daughter had to give me tips on how to run a podcast. My daughter is going to be 16. My 16-year-old is giving me tips on how to run a podcast.
Well, these youngins, they know a thing or two, and we can learn a lot from them because really, I mean, I was your teacher mm-hmm. not too long ago. Right. And so, I mean, today I'm learning from you because I have never been part of a podcast. I have never done Facebook Live before, but I've been on the radio for almost 20 years. So, I mean, there's always room for learning and, you know, always keep an open mind about these kinds of things, especially in media. Well,
and that's something that is really the cool part about it is the fact that you are always learning. Mm-hmm. But the funny thing is the fact that my daughter's like, well, you have to stream live, Dad. And I'm like, well, why? Well, when you get Patreons, you have to give them something mm-hmm. extra that no one else gets. And I'm like, okay, you are going to be my production manager now, right?
Exactly. And you're not going to have to pay her.
Well, right? At least room and board.
Okay. Even Steven there.
Yeah, she gets free room and board, and I get a production manager.
I like it.
So to start this off, thanh you for joining me. I greatly appreciate it.
No problem. I'm excited to be your first guest.
You're my first. Thank you. So the way the podcast sort of breaks down is finding out, talking about the St. Louis industry as a mm-hmm. whole, specifically the St. Louis industry. And a lot of the different topics that I talk about are entertainment and live events type stuff like that. Give a precursor to next week when I will have Kevin Smith, who's the one of the managing partners for Big Blue Spark. Uh-huh. But I want to talk about the St. Louis industry. Mm-hmm. Particularly, how did you get your start?
Well, I first got my toe in the door in the world of radio here locally when I was an intern at WIL. I dressed up like Willie the Cash Cow. So I got my start as a mascot in the radio world. So, but you gotta do what you gotta do.
Well, and a lot of times it's just a matter of getting your foot in the door.
Yes,
you get your foot
it was
in the
a
door,
toe though.
Well, okay.
It was just a
body part that's,
it counted.
It counted.
But I had a lot of fun, and it is amazing that the one thing that I learned that even when you have a mask on and, you know, I had a big cow head on, that when you're with people and they're so excited to be a part of the radio station energy, and here you are as a mascot, you'll get your photo taken with them. And even though they can't see you, you are still smiling inside that cow mask.
Absolutely. And it's almost liberating though, because you don't have to worry about it because you have that other persona in front of you.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the beauties of radio, because most of the time people don't see you. And until the internet, nobody did know who you were. They knew you as a voice. And then they would already, have a thought about what you would look like by the way of your sound. So I always got that when I did meet people in person, it would be like, oh, I thought you would be much shorter with dark hair and glasses. And I'm like, no, I'm blonde. Yeah. And I'm like 5'8". I don't think it's that tall, but still, it's amazing though now. I mean, people can really look to find you online. However, they still don't. And I think that's one of the things that's unique about radio that people have held on to, because they don't always look to see what we look like.
Well, that brings up a really good, interesting point, is the fact that how has it changed from when you first got your start till now? I mean, radio's come a long way, and many people say that radio is on its way out.
No, it's a cockroach.
It is?
Yes,
okay.
It will forever last. Don't ever doubt that. It's just, it changes. And radio has to always be forward thinking, just like really all of us do in the industry, because you don't want to be left behind. So with radio, I teach it here at Lindenwood, radio and production. And I'm always telling students that radio now is more like 3 different shows, possibly 4, because it's what you share on the actual air, the traditional radio, but then it's what you put on your blogs, on the websites that the radio stations hold. But then you also have to put another show when it comes to social media. And now podcasts have become such an important part. And it's just really, you're building that brand that's not only you, but it's also the radio station's brand, because you are, a personality there.
Right. And you end up being the voice of, or the face of now, the radio station.
Yeah. So you better, really think about that and think before you post. Always.
Always, always. And matter of fact, that's what a lot of people don't seem to understand or realize. It's once it's on the internet, it's there forever.
Exactly.
But so one of my other questions that I had for you is, if you could go back in time. Oh no, let's back this up. In high school, what did you want to be? Is this something that you wanted to be?
I wanted to actually be a VJ on MTV. So I came pretty close when I hosted, I don't know if you ever watched the show, but it was the country line dancing show.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, St. Louis Country.
Yeah.
I used to host that show when I worked over at the Bowl and loved it. So, I mean, it did have the music videos, and you had folks locally that were line dancing. And I just absolutely loved that show. I miss doing that, but it was a lot of fun. And that was as close as I came so far to, anything like MTV.
Well, that's close. Hey, landing close to your
I am
goal.
very happy with it.
Well,
it was a great experience.
That's one of those things you kind of go back and say, okay, well, now that you are where you're at, if you go back and talk to that high school kid, what advice would you give them now, knowing what you know now?
Well, I guess I would just still do the same thing, as much as I wish I was further along in my career, because radio has changed so much. And I feel like I got in on it late, because I went ahead and went to school, because really you don't always need school for radio. I hate to share that with you, but there's a lot of folks that, I hate to say that, but it's one of those things, you have the gift of gab in entertainment, and that's not something that's always learned in school.
Right.
So I went to Mizzou and graduated, got my bachelor's degree in psychology of all things. And then I went to Broadcast Center. I came back home to St. Louis and started chasing that dream after, going to college. And I loved Broadcast Center. And then right away, I got my first job in Cape Girardeau doing a classic rock station, KGMO. Shout out. Classic rock that really rocks. And I knew nothing about that format, because I'm more of a pop kind of girl. Right. So it was eye-opening. I learned. I also did news and, doing things that I never expected that I would be doing. But again, I guess everything rhyme and reason. But, it is what it is. So I guess I wouldn't change a thing.
Well, that's amazing, because a lot of people go back and say, oh, no, I got to direct myself one way or the other. In talking about your education, I've got to find out, what is a doctoral?
Oh, yes.
What is a doctoral degree? I saw that and I'm like, I know a little bit about your background. But I was like, okay, for the audience, well, Sherry is a holder of a doctoral degree, and I do believe it is from
Walt Disney World, of course. That it was the best education I've ever had. Okay. I went while I was at Mizzou.
Mm-hmm.
And again, here I go to Mizzou, a school that's known for journalism, and I got a psychology degree. But while I was there, I was approached by the Walt Disney World College Program. It does exist, and it's a wonderful thing. I worked at Epcot Center, and I sold Mickey Mouse back scratchers and T-shirts while I was there. But
so
it was
basically,
great.
you're funding your degree.
I spent way too much money while I was there.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, they did pay you. It was a paid internship.
Oh, so it's an internship,
Mm-hmm.
and that not so. It was one of those things I could just see you sitting in classes with Mickey Mouse ears on and Goofy,
well, you did get those
Goofy
at the
or
end.
Pluto teaching the class. And
No, you were right there. And the thing is, Walt is all about dreams
Mhm.
and making them come true. And it's just it's a magical place. And here I was at Epcot Center and just making sure that everybody, they were greeted with a smile and they left the park with a smile. Because you got to face it, it's not cheap to go there.
no,
Right.
not-
And you want to make sure they're happy. And the company was so awesome. They stood behind you. And just an example of that, a little boy, he lost his autograph book and he was devastated. And I told his mom, I'm like, come back in like an hour. And I will admit, I forged Mickey, Pluto, Goofy, all of their, signatures. And all I had to do is tell my boss. I said, hey, I went ahead and got this, autograph book. I forged the names. It's a write-off. It's okay. They wanted you to do things like that to make it magical.
Right.
And it was just wonderful. And I've taken that idea with every job I've had since. I want to make sure, and just like when I'm on the air, I want to make sure that I'm making you smile, forgetting any problems or issues you have, because there's such a power in music and the smile that comes through your voice. And, letting folks enjoy their journey while they're going to and from work, put them in a good mood, because a lot of people don't like their boss, but I had a great one. Mickey Mouse was awesome. So it was a great experience.
that is awesome. And I know that Lindenwood also has that program in here.
And I've had a couple students now, because I guess to further on my education years later, I decided, and I kept wanting to come here.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wish I would have started here, honestly, because KCLC,
Right.
awesome.
Right.
My goodness, the students get to just start right away. You don't have to wait until like your senior year.
Right.
You do it right away. So I came back to Lindenwood and I ended up getting a master's in communications. So, and then I started teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's been so much fun, but it's been awesome to see some of my students come through that are like, oh, I'm doing the Walt Disney World College program. I'm like, oh my goodness, so of course I can talk forever about Disney. So.
No. I know. And that was one thing that you did share in class and stuff like that. So I sort of had an idea, but in my head, all I could imagine is, Mickey, Pluto, or Goofy trying to teach a class.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wanted to be a princess, but back then they wouldn't allow us to do that. But now the kids, they can be princesses.
So as an intern, you're basically the anything but the main characters.
Well, no, I think that could possibly, but when I was there,
right.
you
Now
were
it's
just
changed.
there.
Right.
Yeah.
You were just.
But now you can be a little bit more magical. I should say you could be Cinderella's assistant. Yeah.
Not maybe one of the wicked stepsisters or something.
Well, now that I've aged a little bit, that's probably what I might be able to help out with. But yeah.
Well, and so this is the part of the program where I would normally look at my audience and say, so do you have any questions for Sherry? The really cool part about this is the more people that are on here, they can put in their questions and then we can read what their questions are. Unfortunately, right now, no one is. Oh, my sister-in-law Cam joined. Hey, Cam.
Hey.
So I'm going to go back to my random. So this is the part where I sent you that whole list of.
Oh yeah, my homework.
Yeah, your homework. But it was one of those things where normally I have. Okay, so I'm a big role-playing geek.
Okay.
So I usually carry like a die 20 with me to roll, to randomize. Missy, pick a number 1 through 20.
Am I supposed to tell you?
Yes, tell me.
No, hold on to it.
Hold on to that.
7.
7. What were you like in high school, and where?
Oh, you asked that
I
one.
did that one. Good job, Miss.
Yeah.
Okay,
We've got
so
that
let me
one
go.
covered.
We'll
So check
go
out
with
the
8,
list.
What was the last thing on TV, and why did you choose to watch it?
Well, my husband's last night, we're on our 4th episode now. We just started watching that Netflix show, The Ranch.
Oh, I love that.
It's pretty good. I mean, pretty goofy, pretty silly, but I mean, it's about, it's got Elliot. Oh, wait, what's his name? Sam Elliott. Yes. He has got such an awesome voice.
Oh, yeah.
That was another thing I wanted to do, voice
yes.
characters. Yeah.
And it's really funny because, and you've been doing voiceover work.
Mm-hmm.
What types of voiceover work have you been doing, and how did you get into it? Other than just radio, they knew you as a voice on the radio, so therefore, she must do voice work.
Well, that's how it starts.
Okay.
Because what happens is you'll have clients and they want someone to read their commercials, and so it's pretty much, hey, we got a script here. We need a chick. Sherry, you're the only chick around. Okay, that's how it starts, and then you fall in love with it because, at least I did, because you can bring words to life. And of course, I've always been a Disney fan. I love cartoons. I'm that kid that's never grown up. And I really loved it. Like, I'm more of a classic Disney girl because you never thought about who that voice really belonged to. You just thought about the character. I mean, Cinderella was real. Cinderella was Cinderella. Now, and maybe it's because I've gotten older, you think about, it's Aladdin, it's Will Smith,
Right.
And you can like them, you cannot like them. And that kind of messes things up because you might think about things they've done in the past. And if there was a show that maybe you liked and maybe you didn't, that role that they played, that might carry over into that character that they're playing. And so that always kind of now disturbs me because I just like kind of being in the wow and the wonder.
Oh, thanks, Chris. Question number 4.
Oh,
thank you, Chris.
Throwing out numbers.
Yeah. So again, being a big role-playing geek, I don't know if you're familiar with the show called Critical Role.
I am not.
Oh my God. Anyways,
is it a good one?
If you like D&D and role-playing and stuff like that, it's a fun show because, as Matt Mercer says, it's a bunch of nerdy-ass voice actors sitting around playing D&D.
Okay.
Which is really funny because when they get into their characters, they actually give them voice. They actually give them...
Bring them to life.
They do. They absolutely bring them to life, which is sort of tough to do sometimes when you're sitting around with a group of friends to kind of have that safe space to actually explore that type of thing. But it's fun because of that. I'm like, I'm just like you. I'm that kid that never grew up around cartoons, that know who Mel Blanc is.
Yes.
Who knows and I forget the gentleman who did a lot of the Disney voices.
I think about James Earl Jones. He's incredible.
Oh, yeah, no. But but you're right. In the past, you had no idea who these voice actors were. They were just those characters.
Yeah.
Now, because of the internet, because of mass media, you know who these people are. And a lot of movies, film, and such are looking for names because that's the attachment to the film. Will Smith as the genie. Okay. But it's one of those things where you know who these people are, and you're absolutely right. You sort of have two streams of thought. Can you get into this character as a character versus that's Will Smith doing his voice?
Yeah, and digging deeper, you think about that. Do kids, they don't know because they don't know a lot of those actors. Right. So do they do that for the adults to go see? Because I don't think it's for the kids. I think it's definitely for the adults. But
well, and then again, there's a certain age break. Even kids who are, kids are tech savvy as I've stated.
Yeah.
Tara, I love you. But it's one of those things, being tech savvy by the age of, 10, they have their iPhone, so saying that they don't know who these characters are. I think back in the day when you start talking about voice acting and stuff, a good example is the voice acting for video games. People who do the monologues and stuff for the video games have no idea who these people are.
Yeah, and that's pretty cool not knowing.
It is. And that's sort of that facade where we talked about radio and being a mascot. There's that facade. And you can be whoever you want, and So long as you give the producers what they're looking for, or if you take that experimental leap and go a different way and the producer's like, that's it. Can you now do that for 3 days?
Yes.
You're like, okay, if I can remember.
Yeah.
So, all the way back going home. Sterling Holloway. Oh, Jim Cummings. Okay. Thank you. I'm so glad.
Who's doing what role?
No, yeah, right.
But sometimes it's good not even to know their names, whoever provided the voices.
Right.
To never know who they were.
Absolutely. And until Critical Role, I've played several games where Matt Mercer's been the voice for it. Had no idea. Now that I'm a Critical Role fan, it's like, I know exactly who that is. But it all comes down to mass media and the width and breadth of people being able to be contacted. And just so everyone knows, I will be putting Sherry's link up. She is looking for more jobs.
Yes, I need more voice work.
She needs
I need
more
to pay
voice
the
work. It is Sherry Farmer.
Yeah, just Sherry Farmer. You can visit me on website, sherryfarmer.com. But Facebook, it's Sherry Farmer. You can follow me there on my little fan page. And then also Twitter, it's Sherry Farmer. But then on Instagram, it's Sherry M as in Mickey Mouse. But it actually means Michelle.
Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes you have to do what you have to do to get those leads into it. Let's see what since you said 4, I just want to see what 4 was. Oh, what are you not very good at?
Saying no. I'm horrible at saying no. No, seriously, it'd be like, hey, I know that you've been up all night, but do you care to get up at 2:00 in the morning? I got a job for you. Sure.
Well, and that was funny having that conversation with you at 2 in the morning. I'm like, what are you still doing?
I did. I texted you at 2 a.m. I'm like, I'm still awake.
Well,
things are on my mind.
My first thought was, she's pulling a night shift. I mean, the radio's personality, 24/7.
Yeah.
But the reply to me was, what am I doing? I was like, duh, homework.
Yeah.
What else would I be doing at 2 in the morning?
Still in school.
Still in school. But so do you have anything new coming up, going on?
I'm hoping. No. Well, we started a new semester starting a week from today at
I was going to say,
Lindenwood.
Lindenwood has students, I think the sports teams are starting to come back.
Floating in.
Yeah.
But I report back for duty on Tuesday and, looking forward to meeting the new students. And what I learned from them, don't let them know this. But I do. I learn a lot from my students because they're younger and they are sharing, the things that are of most interest to them, which they are totally into podcasting. And like you're talking about your daughter, I mean, they are born using their thumbs. Right. So they know all about social media, all these different platforms, and they've got really cool terms for things. So I try to learn from them. So I'm like, cool. And I come across as younger than what I really am. But it's eye-opening. And I think every generation we can learn from. I definitely think that the younger generation, sometimes people say some things about them that's not very kind. But I also think there's a lot of really good things that we need to stay, open-minded about. I think you're Gen X, I'm a Gen X.
We're both Gen X's.
And let's see, the millennials.
Now, wait a minute.
We're younger than that now.
Right.
It's Z.
I think it's Z. I got schooled on this by my daughter as well. It's like, Dad, I'm not a millennial. I'm a Gen Y. Okay.
Gen Y. Okay.
And it's Y.
Why? I thought we were on Z already. I don't know.
I think we are too, but yeah, it's an interesting slice. But yeah, certain generations have taken heat now, and that's regardless.
Yeah, the millennials. I feel for them, but they, I think, have taught us a lot because I think they really appreciate experiences in life. Where I think our generation was more like, okay, you go to school, make money, and you go. And if you work hard, it pays off. You want to stay at the same employer, like your parents did for so many years. And I struggle with that because part of me is embarrassed as all get up because I've worked at so many different radio groups in St. Louis. But millennials are like, what? Who cares? I worked there for 4 months, over here 5 months. I'm getting experience. And they would rather leave a job to get that experience. Let's say if it's going, across the pond to do a backpacking deal across Europe. That's experience. And that is something that our generation, we're like, oh no, I got to keep working because I have to think about tomorrow, where they're like, you know what? You don't know how long you're going to be here. Go for it.
And that is and I've been finding myself, again, being back in school, I've been finding myself saying that is more the mentality. I mean, it's almost a shift from saying, oh, I've got to worry about tomorrow. I've got to worry about, my future. I've got to worry about this. But I just was notified by Facebook that 4 years ago today, I got my results back from my cancer and had beaten it.
Yay.
And so I posted on there, and it really has become one of those things where it's like that mind shift of saying, you don't know how, and so what? You have to pay the bills, but at the same time, having those memories and having the experiences and sitting down and having discussions with friends and saying, hey, this is great. Those are the things that I don't think a lot of people really stop to think about anymore, except for the millennials and everything. And that's why they're like, there's such that confrontation between the generations is like, you have no motivation. It's like, well, yeah, I do, but it's nothing to do with the same goals that you've got.
And they know, the way companies go, that there's no longer, even if you stay somewhere for years, there's not that connection, that family atmosphere anymore, because you can be replaced with a robot, and I think they know that more so than the older folks, then they know it. But I think there's a happy middle ground there to where I wouldn't go up and leave a job like that, like some of them tend to do. But maybe more flexibility. I think we all need that, because with the internet and with all their cell phones, we are able to be watched by our bosses and contacted by our bosses 24/7. So when people take a vacation, they are not completely unplugging. And that's a shame. And I think that's why we're seeing so many people, depressed and, struggling inside. It's because of that. And I think our millennials are seeing that a lot too. And maybe they can learn that from us Gen Xers and beyond, that you do need that time out. You can still, play board games. They don't always have to be with a screen in front of you.
One other thing, and I think we'll start rolling this down, because I don't see a lot of people jumping up on live. So, but I wanted to talk about your furry babies, because I know they mean so much to you.
Yes.
And I'm trying to remember which organization were you?
I am actually on the board at Stray Rescue.
That's right. That's the one. I was like, I'm trying to remember which one it is.
Yes.
Do you want to give a plug to them?
Yes, definitely. Any animal shelter is a wonderful thing. They're helping these animals that are looking for those forever loving homes. If you have room in your house, definitely adopt. If you don't have the room in your house, I totally understand that, because sometimes your life gets crazy, and you don't have that time to devote completely to a little one, because they need a lot of time. But you can always just go to Say Stray Rescue and walk dogs. They love that. You can, gather up blankets. They need blankets. They need peanut butter. They need bleach. It's amazing the things that they need, that you can really help out shelters.
Yeah, it is. And it's both my dogs are rescue dogs.
Yay! And
yes, and I couldn't be more happier with them. I had to laugh. You got to let everyone know the names of your dogs.
Well, I wanted to do something fun with my fur babies, and I named them Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent. So they weigh a whole 5 pounds each. They're my superheroes. And so they are, and actually I named them that before the movie came out, that had both Superman and Batman together. Okay. So, that's the true identities of those two characters, Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent. And just on a side note, I another reason why I wanted Bruce Wayne is because my dad, his middle name is Wayne as well. So you see that family connection. So yeah.
They carried on the name.
Mm-hmm. So they're my kids, definitely.
Real quick, Debbie, it's okay. Oh, okay. If anyone on Facebook Live has any questions, go ahead and just text them on in. We'll try to talk through them. I've had a couple of questions on Facebook Live. One of the questions that I had for you was, and in teaching here at Lindenwood, and the industry changing so much. And so let's talk a little bit wider on radio itself.
Okay.
And we know that it's more than one platform now, because, unless you're Seaborn and you don't have that syndicated show, what has changed? And as I put on there, it's no longer Johnny Fever on the radio.
No, it's a kind of a shame because they talked a lot longer.
Oh, yes, they did.
And it does amaze me. I wish someone would do a study. I don't have time for it to do the study. But it's interesting to me that back in the day, radio, you did talk longer. And I will say I've had several bosses in the past who are like, you got to shorten that talk time. All of us have pretty much been told that. But then podcasts are becoming so popular because they are nothing but talk for the most part, unless you're lucky enough to have some sponsors. And let's face it, we all want sponsors.
Right. Yes, St. Louis front of house would like some sponsors.
Bring the money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Where's our tip jar? Yeah.
I left it outside. Mm-hmm. But that whole, and it's so funny because in your class, when you play WKRP and the
turkey drop.
Yeah. When that episode comes up, it is funny because it is such a throwback. And how today, I don't think a lot of radio personalities are much more than that space connector between the music.
Yeah, a lot of times I would have to say professionalism. It's a good thing and a curse all at the same time, because when you get so regimented and you have to do it this way and there's so many rules and that kind of thing, that you lose the ability to be silly and to still have fun. And sometimes that lacks because it is a business. And I hate to say this, but we're in a world where, I'm horrible. We have to be so politically correct that does take some of the silliness and the playfulness out of it, because sometimes people are so paranoid they're going to get in trouble for something that they don't do those things, which again, it all depends on your boss.
Right.
And who you're working for.
And again, when you look at the stations that you work for. So that was the other thing. The difference between working for Y98 or The Bull or KEZK, which is, and those stations all have different personalities.
Oh yeah.
How do you get into the personality mindset when you're at different radio stations?
Well, what's really cool is, they do studies, and that is something that I think a lot of people don't realize, that radio stations, they find out who's listening to them, and they can figure out, is it the 25, 54-year-old female? Is it more male dominated? But that's kind of how you go. When you find that kind of information out, you kind of get to know the country lifestyle, country radio. And I really think that pop, which would be like your Y98, they're kind of the same. You've got the same audience. They want to have fun. They want to know about their artists, keep things lighthearted and, fun. I mean, the average age of the listeners, and you gear it toward that. So if I were to get on, let's say a younger station, which would be like Z1077 or now.
Right.
I would definitely have to do more homework. I mean, I'm going to have to get in the mindset of, a 16-year-old. So you will see those stations are more involved with social media versus, your stations that are more geared toward oldies, which of course that is always an eye opener. And I always share that information with students too, because you think, oh, I'm so cool right now, but wait till the day that Journey or, Justin Bieber is considered an oldie song, or even Taylor Swift. Once she hits the oldies format, you're gonna be like, what happened? I am old, and that's a big eye opener. Because to me, I think oldies should always be like your Elvis, and even beyond that, because Dean Martin, all those guys, because I mean, why forget music?
Right.
And that's one thing I wish that we still had in regular radio, that we still played those old songs and even mixed them with today. I mean, I wouldn't care to hear a Justin Bieber song mixed up with a, Frank Sinatra back to back. That'd be pretty cool.
That'd be interesting.
But I don't know if it'd work.
No, but it's, and talking about radio personalities, it is one of those things where the good example is back in Johnny Fever era,
Yeah.
It was the DJ. It was his personality. It was his show. The station was just the vehicle. Now it's the station that is the personality. And all the radio personalities are working to reinforce that branding.
Well, if you think about it, history is kind of repeating itself. Instead of the radio personality, it is your social influencer.
Correct.
They are kind of what DJs used to have more responsibility, I guess, or that's kind of their job more so. But now it's kind of changed toward, because the internet and all the social media stuff, that you see social, media influencers. And, I've had a couple in my class that they are making some good side money, just, wearing different outfits, giving shout outs to different designers. And I'm proud of them for the little entrepreneurs that they became when they were like 8, 9 years old. I mean, they know what they're doing.
Right. And so it's interesting because of the fact that a lot of the industry has tried to do the vehicle branding. So television stations have their own brands. Each station has their own brands. Every magazine has its own branding. Radio station has its own branding. But like you said, it's taking another twist.
Yeah, it's all social media.
Social media now is making the individual the branding, and the individual portrays how they when they get into engagement, stuff like that.
Well, and that's why a lot of my students, when they, tell me about jobs that they're looking for and when they're applying for places, that is one of the things that a lot of these media companies want to know. How many followers do you have? And, being older, I'm just like, wait, you're basically winning when it comes to whether or not you're going to get hired because of how many friends you have. I mean, it's like,
how many followers you have. Yeah.
I picture myself back in, elementary school. Well, I had more friends than you. My daddy's better than your daddy, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, really? This is what it's come down to? But it really does help make or break you when it comes to the world of media.
Well, and again, I'm learning so much from my daughter because she watches YouTube casts and listens to podcasts and stuff like that. And when she talks about them, and there are, millions of followers for these people playing games on, I'm just like,
or eating food or making weird noises. There's crazy videos out there.
I'm like, okay, great. But then they become an influencer. And even one of the guys that has also been playing, he's gotten his start. A lot of groups have started getting their start on YouTube and stuff like that.
Justin Bieber.
Pentatonics.
Yeah.
But you have these groups that get their start and just develop that following, and it grows and it grows, and it's just amazing. But you're right. It's one of those things where having to find your niche, because it's not just blasting everything out there, because if you don't have a specific target audience, you might as well be talking to a wall. But I think in a lot of ways, you see that like radio stations trying to narrow down that band so that they can hit target audiences.
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, the target audience, because if you think about it, every product has a target audience as well. So they really work well together. And, no matter what happens, there is power in radio. It is the cockroach of media. It's not going to die because it started it all. I mean, you think about, any TV show, soap operas, they started on radio, the theater of the mind, which made you have to wonder. And that is something I think we lack now, is the whole wonder.
Right. Everything has to be laid out.
Right in front of you.
Well,
see the pictures.
Not only that, but if you don't know how, you always Google it. And you can
Exactly.
find,
There's no wonder we're lazy. I don't even remember my passwords. I've got that all written down too. And you don't have to memorize phone numbers.
No. Yeah. It's like, what's your phone number? I don't call myself. Yeah. Actually, I want to make sure I give a shout out to Dr. Flippin Wynn, who is my capstone instructor, as well as used to be my advisor.
Okay.
But let's see. One last shout to the Facebook Live audience. Anyone have any questions, comments? Do we need to restate Sherry's contact information so that we can get her voiceover work done?
Yes, please. Yes.
So the stations that you're on now are
here locally, Y98 and KEZK. I'm part of the intercom group there, it's just a great pleasure. Actually, some other Lindenwood students are working there now too, so I'm very proud of them, and to hopefully in some little way help influence them and help them develop more as personalities. I'm very excited about that. Also here, obviously, at Lindenwood, Tuesdays and Thursdays, radio and production class. And then
it's a really good class.
Yes.
I learned a lot. This is coming from the video guy, the video guy learning a new side of business.
Yeah, which is funny because I want to learn video, and here you were in my class to learn radio. So I'm like, they work so well together, though.
It is a connection. It is definitely a connection. One, I have to thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
This is one of the reasons why I really wanted to get you on first, because it was like, I need someone that I know has had an extensive background in interviews. Because we both know how occasionally interviews are like pulling teeth.
Never ask a yes/no question, because they'll just say yes/no. And then you're like, I got this time to fill.
Right.
Awkward.
So we'll kind of touch on that, and I don't want to give away the rest of your class.
Oh, okay.
But what I was saying was, what tips do you give interviewers and podcasters out there, as far as, especially when you sit down with someone who's never done this before, and other than research,
Yes.
always research your guests. How else do you prepare yourself, or do you have tricks or tips that you keep in the back of your mind if you're having someone that's having struggles giving you yes/no answers? And
well, I think sometimes it's important to sit down with your guest a little bit before you turn on the mic, because it is amazing having the TV and radio experience that I had. You put a camera in front of somebody's face, or you put a microphone in front of their face, they will clam up, right? But you're in a room by yourself for the most part, and most people don't realize that. So I know there's nobody. This is just the two of us. I mean, you're watching or on Facebook, but we can't see you.
Yeah.
So when you can't see someone, I think the nerves are a little bit easier. I guess not quite as stressful. But if you just have a little bit of a one-on-one with your guests before they come in, make them feel comfortable, and ask them those questions they don't get asked, especially when it comes to celebrities. They get asked all the time, who dating, blah, blah, blah. But what about that question? Hey, when you were 5, what did you like for breakfast? What was your favorite sugary cereal? Ask those questions that they don't get asked all the time, and really listen. That's the most important thing. Listen to what they are saying, because when you do, you're going to be able to have a really unique interview, because what you planned on asking them versus what you end up asking them when you are listening to them, that story is going to go somewhere else. And you might find out the fact that, when they were little, they had an imaginary friend named Fred. I don't know, but that could happen.
But and in this case, and one of the theories behind doing this podcast is making a connection with your guest, or making a connection specifically with your audience. Oh, okay. Making a connection with your audience, because the more, and this is one of those theory things working on, is the fact that the more of a connection that you make with your audience. Again, we talk about the podcasters with 1 million followers and stuff like that. a lot of it starts out that they start doing something cool or silly, and people start watching. But then they start making that connection with
Yeah,
those
you have
people.
to just be real.
Yeah.
I mean, people they know when you're being fake. They know it. It comes across in your voice, and they can tell when you're just totally trying to make a pitch. Let's say, you get a new sponsor or something like that, and you're just blah, blah, blah. But, don't let that influence you. Keep it real. And I know that's easier said than done, I guess, to explain. But if you just always be yourself, then I think you'll win.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that I learned a lot in your class is it's sort of frightening when you're standing in front of the board and the clock is ticking down and you've got, 15 seconds to say something plus pitch the next piece of music. And you're like, blah. But it really does come back down to, I found myself sadly slipping into the Johnny Fever.
Oh, but it's fun. Well, I was telling you when we were sitting here, I'm like, if you've ever seen Saturday Night Live and those girls, they are, pretending they're, DJs, and they're like, yeah, so you're going to talk like this. And trust me, every jock wants to deep down inside. But then you're like, I got to be, this other kind of person in one way. I mean, you're still keeping it real, but you can't be as silly as you want to, because you want to say, well, I can't wait to play this Justin Bieber song one more time because I haven't gotten enough of it. But then that would be bad.
Yeah.
And you still love Justin. Don't get me wrong here. But, after you've played it 500 times, sometimes you do want to say something silly. And it is what it is,
Well, and that's always funny because when you mentioned that and the Blues won and Gloria was did you happen to be at the station?
No, I was not
you.
really there. We played it over and over and over and over again. I got to listen though. And I just think that I will say this. I am so happy that I have a boss there who let that happen, because that is something that doesn't always happen.
No.
Because you're like, oh no, we have to be all professional about it. No, we went out and we had fun, and we played Gloria back to back to back to back. And, Courtney and company at Y98, they started it all and had fun with our listeners, had fun with our hometown of St. Louis, had fun with the Blues. And it was real and natural.
It was so funny because I'm trying to remember if it was one of the games that they started playing, and it's the first time they played Gloria for 24 hours before the win. And I remember the radio personality just cutting up because he's like, and once again, it's Gloria. And
Jill Devine, who went to Lindenwood, worked over here at KCLC. It was so funny because she did a countdown. And she was like, coming in at number 5. Again, believe it or not, it's Gloria. And, having fun with it, because, it really did. The power of music brought St. Louis together.
Oh, yes.
The energy in this town was amazing. And you have to laugh about it because you're like, I can't believe I'm playing Gloria again. But then you're like, I can't believe I'm in this wonderful situation that I'm in this part of my life that I will never forget.
Yeah.
How often are the Blues going to win the Stanley Cup? It's not going to happen every day.
No,
we're hopeful for next year.
Right, yeah. But no, and that was one of those things where giving the station and everyone the freedom to have that fun with it, because it was a big deal. It was a huge deal.
Once in a lifetime kind of deal. Yeah.
Kind of double checking time here. Oh, look, 10 minutes. In the radio industry as a whole, kind of touching on radio in St. Louis versus radio for the rest of the country, differences that you deal with or seen or work with?
Well, of course, so much is on market size.
Right.
Of course, your LA and New York and Chicago, they get more love when it comes to having access sometimes to artists. But I will say, at least in the country industry, artists are always willing to come in and talk to you. There's a big, just so much love with country artists. They really are accommodating and just very friendly. Now, I can't say that, CHR or like your Justin Biebers or folks like that on that side of the world or that side of the music, that they're not. It's just I haven't experienced as much love and as much accessibility as you do with country. So that format will always be near and dear to my heart. But as far as like the differences, I mean, sometimes the music will be different. And a lot of times if, say, Chicago, if it's a hit there, they'll get on it before we do. It's kind of like the fashion industry.
Right, absolutely.
If it's in California, maybe eventually in 10 years later, we'll get it here in Missouri.
Right, and then that was this whole discussion is like, is St. Louis the 6-year behind or the 10-year behind?
In fashion.
Yeah.
But we're pretty quick when it comes to music because, again, now with the internet, all this stuff's coming out faster. So we don't have to wait anymore for the artists to send us the CD. CDs, what are those? Everything comes over on pretty much MP3s nowadays too for radio stations.
Yeah.
And that it's kind of a bummer in a way for me because when we do have folks like Boy Scout troops and Girl Scout troops who come over to get the tour of the radio station, I always feel like I want to put up some posters or throw CDs around, some records,
Right.
because now everything's just like their home computer.
Right,
I'm like,
right.
That's kind of boring. But that's what it looks like. So we've evolved too. So, yeah.
Well, and that's the interesting part about that is the fact that the difference between, when you talk about market share, the East Coast, West Coast, even the difference between St. Louis and Chicago is tremendous. And it's something that a lot of people don't really understand.
Yeah, that's like on the sales side of things. So let's say, a big company wants to buy certain markets.
Right.
They may or may not choose St. Louis because we are, I think, market number 22, I think, or 23 in radio. They might only want to buy the top 5 or the top 10, something like that. So, I mean, that does make a difference. So,
when we talk differences in markets and stuff like that, and my question went right out the window. Oh, I know.
It's okay.
It was one of those things. It was like spaced. When we talk about markets, what is it about this market that you've learned over the years? And again, it's kind of touching back to the base of, what advice you give your students or people that talk to you about getting into radio and stuff like that. What are some of the key things that you talk about to be successful in this industry?
Well, I will have to say, I think everyone should start, and I was always told this, to start in a smaller market, especially one outside of home, because you want to make your mistakes there so no one knows you, like from high school. They'll be like, oh my gosh, I heard you and you messed up. You don't want to deal with that. So Well, in a very small town, maybe Golden, Illinois. I actually did some things there. It's a very small town, wonderful people. And that is another thing that you will notice between a small market and a large market. Small market, you'll do things like open up a little grocery store in town. And so many people will come. It's a big gathering event. It is an event. Your radio station is an event. When you get to a larger market, like I can only imagine with LA what that's like, because you're literally competing with celebrities in LA. Do you think they want to go to the radio station event or a Kardashian event?
Right.
The
toss-up.
But it is hard because they've got so much more competition when it comes to like the personality level. But it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed small market because they are so appreciative to radio. And those are the things they have to do because they don't have all these other things like we do. This beautiful St. Louis Zoo or, the Looney or all these different places you can go to have events. Their events are with the radio station, if they're at the carnival or if they're at the state fair, the county fair. And I've had some wonderful times at county fairs. Everything can be fried.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
But
it's fun.
I keep promising my daughter that we can make it back up to the Minnesota State Fair because you're right. Everything can be fried and it's always on a stick. Yeah.
And also you'll get to meet the artists before they become big. And that is a lot of fun. So, one of my favorite artists that I've ever met was Brad Paisley. And it was when he was up and coming. And now you're like, it's Brad Paisley, but he was, up and coming and doing the state fairs, and even Kenny Chesney, you have to get started somewhere,
right?
Because that was before well, I think Star Search was still going on, but it was before American Idol. And you look, at Carrie Underwood, but she didn't, just automatically sell out big stadiums either. It took her time to grow, but still she was able to be on that platform. And speaking of Carrie Underwood, we'll have to say, I had an artist with her with a meet and greet with our listeners. And it was so funny. This is when I was in Springfield, Missouri. And here she comes to town. And it was like an open forum where listeners, she did an acoustic set for so many of them, as well as, us at the radio station. And they could ask her anything. And they were so nervous because it's like, oh my gosh, Carrie Underwood is in front of me. And it's amazing how people get clammed up. And she was like, talk to me, even though I'm Carrie Underwood, talk to me. And she was so sweet. And it was funny, though, that folks were afraid to talk to her.
And that goes back to making the connection. And there's at times on the radio and music and stuff like that, there is that barrier. I'm playing your music, but I'm a fan. But God, if I ran into you, it'd be like, there's still that barrier.
I was nervous to be around her too. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so pretty. You're so talented. What are your makeup tips? You're a vegetarian too. Tell me more,
Well,
so.
And it's interesting because when we go back to the social media side of it, it's like they're one-to-one. They're right there and they have the access to saying, you got questions for me, I'll answer them. Or having a live Twitter feed during an event where, I'm still trying to figure out how that one works because the Twitter feeds, once you get more than 5 people on it, are just moving so fast. It's like, oh God, how do I actually read any of the questions?
Yeah.
But specifically, your advice for those people interested in radio. And I hope I gave you enough time for this one.
Well, it's a hard one. There's no, one answer. I mean, I would say just always try to learn, always stay open-minded, continue to move forward, practice, write out your breaks. I always tell students to write out their breaks. Don't be embarrassed of that because, time is limited.
Yes.
So you write out your breaks. If you only have 10 seconds to talk over a song, you figure out what you're going to say and then cut out a lot of those fluff words. Get rid of those. Get rid of the ums, ands, But that would be a lot. And get into the music. Get to know the artist. Just like when I told you that my first job was a classic rock station. I knew nothing about classic rock. I was like, what? I know ZZ Top, but I knew their pop songs and their Bon Jovi ballads. That's what I knew. So be open-minded, learn, and you'll fall in love. Every genre of music has good stuff.
Right.
Just be open-minded with that. Definitely reach out to your program directors. Find folks that you look up to, the way they sound, but don't allow that to influence you too much to where you're being like them, because you want to pave your own way. But don't be afraid to make those mistakes. Move around a little bit. Be willing to get in there and learn everything you can. And in today's world, I would say you don't only want to know how to talk, you want to know how to do video.
Right.
Definitely know about social media, know about those influencers, and follow who everybody else is following, because you're going to learn from them.
Right.
And do your thing, but don't stop being you.
And I think in a lot of ways that is the thread, is be the individuals. There are people there, that try to do throwbacks and stuff like that, which is cool for a cliche type episode. But in the end, you've got to be who you are and your own personality.
Yeah, and it's a challenge. I mean, you're going to have, well, at least in radio, they always say you know that you've made it or you're getting somewhere once you've been fired. You've been fired a couple times, and it's heartbreaking. It is something that is incredibly difficult to deal with. That rejection, it's hard to get over and to keep on keeping on. But if you hold on, and even if you have 5 other part-time jobs while you are chasing a radio dream, just hold on. If it's what you love, I'm hopeful still too that it's all gonna work out.
And just for everyone, it's sherryfarmer.com. It's Sherry Farmer on Facebook. What's the other
Twitter.
One? And Twitter.
And then on Instagram, I'm Sherry M. Farmer.
Sherry.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so very much for this.
No problem at all. Thank you.
I appreciate you being my first. I appreciate the audience who, Chris and Cam and Dr. Wynn.
I hope you get a good grade for this.
I am too, since Dr. Wynn's on here. It's like, hi, Dr. Wynn. Next week we have Kevin Smith, who's one of the managing partners for Big Blue Spark, and we'll talk about live events and that industry. It's interesting that you mentioned all those great places to have events, and we'll get a little bit more into what that industry is like. Again, want to thank the people who joined us on Facebook Live. I will be doing this again on the 22nd with Kevin Smith, and again on the 30th with Pete. Man, I'm gonna blow
Pete.
it.
Oh, time's up. Sorry, we're not going to know who Pete is.
I'm sorry.
His full name.
Pete Carlos.
Peter Carlos.
Yes.
Oh, when you say Pete, I'm like, who?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Peter Carlos. He's
Peter
an awesome guy.
Yes.
You're going to learn so much from him. He's an interesting character.
Oh, Peter's an awesome character.
Yes. So I'm looking forward to that one too. So yeah.
So join me Thursday. It'll be at a later time, which will probably be better for people to actually.
Well, it depends on the work day.
Yeah, no, it does. Other than that, thank you all, and I will be signing off as soon as I get. Man, I have this great app.
There's so many things that you have to push and stay.
Yeah, that's right.
Cognizant of, right? This button, that button. Yeah.
Sherry, thank you for the fill. I really do appreciate that.
No
I knew this was a great idea to have her on.
I understand Phil and stretching.
Oh yeah, Phil and stretching. All right. So we'll see you all next week.
Bye.